When people first learn about security operations technology, it is easy to assume the main challenge is picking the most powerful platform, but real success comes from choosing tools that fit the way your operation actually works. A Security Operations Center, SOC, is a living system made of people, processes, data, and decisions, and tools either support that system or fight against it. This is why tool choice is a management topic, not just a technical shopping exercise, because a mismatched tool can create constant friction, wasted time, and missed signals even if the feature list looks impressive. A good choice, by contrast, makes routine work easier, makes investigations clearer, and makes response decisions more consistent under pressure. The goal here is to help you understand how to choose core SOC tooling categories so they support operations instead of distracting from them. You are going to learn to think in terms of operational needs, evidence flow, and sustainability rather than in terms of buzzwords. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. The first thing to anchor is that operations should drive tools, not the other way around, because tools cannot invent clarity and discipline if the program does not already value them. Before you even think about a platform category, you want a clear picture of what the SOC must deliver, such as triage, investigation, incident coordination, and reporting, and what time expectations exist for critical events. You also want to understand the environment's evidence sources, because a tool that depends on data you cannot reliably collect will not deliver the outcomes you expect. This is where many programs stumble, because they buy a platform that assumes mature logging, consistent identity telemetry, and clean asset context, then discover those foundations are missing. A mature selection process starts by identifying the decisions the SOC must make every day and the evidence needed to make those decisions with confidence. That focus keeps you from choosing tools based on popularity or fear, and instead chooses tools based on whether they make your operation faster, steadier, and more defensible. The exam often rewards this mindset because it reflects how real programs succeed. A useful way to frame tool selection is to picture the journey from signal to decision to action, because that journey is what your core platforms must support without breaking. Signals arrive as logs, alerts, and context from many sources, and the SOC must sort them by priority and confidence before taking any disruptive action. Decisions should be consistent, meaning different analysts should reach similar conclusions when they see the same evidence, which requires both good data and a workflow that guides judgment. Actions should be controlled, documented, and reversible where possible, because security response often involves trade-offs that affect business operations. Tools that support this journey reduce time wasted on searching, copying, and guessing, and they increase the chance that the right people see the right information at the right time. Tools that do not support the journey create blind spots, duplicate work, and inconsistent response behavior. When you choose platforms, you are really choosing how smoothly this journey will operate during normal days and during incident surges. Security Information and Event Management, SIEM, is often the first platform people think about, and you should treat it as the backbone for central visibility and investigation evidence rather than as a magic detector. SIEM is valuable when it can reliably ingest the logs that matter, normalize them so they are searchable and comparable, and support correlation so patterns appear that would be invisible in isolated sources. From an operations view, the most important question is whether the SIEM will help your team answer common investigative questions quickly, like what happened, when it happened, who was involved, and what else occurred around the same time. You also care about whether it can support detection logic that is maintainable, meaning rules can be tuned, tested, and improved without constant chaos. A strong SIEM choice supports retention and access to historical evidence, because many investigations require looking back to find initial access or earlier related activity. If you select a SIEM that cannot keep up with your event volume, cannot handle your log formats reliably, or cannot support practical searching in context, you end up with a platform that looks central but is operationally weak. A defensible choice emphasizes evidence quality, searchability, and reliable ingestion over flashy dashboards. Endpoint detection and response, EDR, selection should be driven by how much endpoint visibility you truly need and how you plan to use that visibility during investigations and containment. The most important contribution of EDR is that it shows what happened on the device, which often includes process behavior, changes to files or configurations, and indicators of suspicious execution that do not appear clearly in centralized logs. Operationally, you want EDR to help you move from an alert to a clear story of activity, because the faster you can build that story, the faster you can decide whether an event is benign or dangerous. You also want response capability to be controlled and aligned with authority, because isolating a device or stopping a process can reduce harm, but can also disrupt legitimate work if used too aggressively. A mature selection process asks whether EDR coverage will realistically reach the endpoints that matter most, such as high-value servers or user devices that access sensitive data. It also asks whether the platform can provide consistent telemetry and context that can be shared with the rest of the SOC workflow. If EDR is chosen without considering deployment scope, policy governance, and investigation usability, it can become an expensive tool that delivers inconsistent value. A defensible choice prioritizes investigation clarity, reliable telemetry, and controlled response actions that fit your operational reality. Security orchestration, automation, and response, SOAR, is often misunderstood as a shortcut to doing more with less, but the more accurate view is that it makes good processes repeatable and reduces time wasted on repetitive work. A SOAR platform is most valuable when your SOC has a clear triage workflow and you can identify steps that are safe to automate, such as enrichment, data gathering, routing, and documentation support. Operationally, the goal is to reduce manual copying and tool switching so analysts spend their time thinking rather than performing mechanical tasks. A strong SOAR choice also helps maintain consistency, because it can guide analysts through standard decision checkpoints and ensure that key information is captured in the same way each time. However, automation can create harm if it is applied to decisions that require human judgment, because a wrong automated action can spread quickly and disrupt systems at scale. That is why the best selection mindset asks what you want to automate and why, and whether you can test and govern those automations safely. A defensible choice treats SOAR as an operational accelerator that depends on well-defined processes and strong controls. If the underlying process is unclear, SOAR will automate confusion, which is the opposite of what a SOC needs. Case management tooling is the category that often separates a SOC that feels professional from one that feels like a collection of disconnected chats and spreadsheets. Case management is how you track alerts, investigations, evidence, decisions, communications, and outcomes over time so that work remains coherent across shifts and across teams. Operationally, you want cases to capture what is known, what is suspected, what has been checked, and what is planned next, because that prevents the loss of context that makes incidents harder and slower to resolve. You also want case management to support escalation paths, because involving leadership or system owners should not require reinventing the story each time. A strong case tool supports consistent documentation and status tracking, which improves continuity and makes after-action learning possible. It also supports accountability in a healthy way, meaning you can review decisions and improve processes without blaming individuals for systemic issues. If case tracking is weak, the SOC becomes vulnerable to repeated work, missed handoffs, and confusion about ownership during high stress. A defensible selection prioritizes usability, consistency, and integration with evidence sources so the case record becomes the reliable center of truth. Now bring these categories together by focusing on how evidence should flow between them, because tool value often comes from how smoothly an analyst can pivot from one system to another without losing time or trust. A common operational pattern is that a SIEM alert initiates work. EDR provides deep endpoint context to confirm or refute the hypothesis. SOAR supports enrichment and routing to reduce manual steps, and the case system captures the narrative and decisions. If these tools are chosen in isolation, evidence flow becomes clumsy, and analysts spend time searching, copying, and re-entering the same details, which increases mistakes and delays. If they are chosen with evidence flow in mind, each platform reinforces the others, and the analyst experience becomes faster and calmer. This is why integration should be considered during selection, but integration should not be treated as a goal by itself. The real goal is that the SOC can answer key questions quickly and consistently, and that actions are documented and governed. A defensible tool strategy emphasizes friction reduction and evidence continuity, because those are operational needs that directly affect response quality. A beginner-friendly way to judge whether a tool supports operations is to ask how it affects triage, because triage is where time is won or lost in most programs. Triage is the process of deciding what an alert means, how urgent it is, and what to do next, and it depends on having enough context quickly. A SIEM that generates alerts without helpful context can slow triage because analysts must hunt for basic information like asset owner, criticality, or related activity. An EDR that provides clear process trees and timelines can speed triage because it quickly shows whether suspicious behavior likely occurred. A SOAR that automatically gathers related data and attaches it to the case can speed triage by reducing the manual steps needed to form an initial hypothesis. A case tool that makes it easy to capture what has been validated prevents triage from being repeated by multiple people. When you choose tools, you should evaluate whether they help triage produce consistent decisions, because consistent triage is the foundation for consistent escalation and response. If triage is noisy and inconsistent, everything downstream becomes harder. Investigation support is the next selection lens, because the SOC must be able to move from suspicion to evidence-based understanding without being trapped by tool limitations. Investigations often require searching across time, correlating activity across systems, and validating whether a pattern fits attacker behavior or normal operations. ASIEM should support efficient searching and correlation so investigators can reconstruct sequences and test hypotheses, not just view isolated alerts. EDR should support deep endpoint analysis so investigators can confirm whether suspicious execution happened, what initiated it, and what follow-on actions occurred. SOAR can support investigations by pulling in context from multiple sources, but only if it is designed to enrich without overwhelming the analyst with irrelevant noise. The case tool should support structured notes, evidence attachment, and timeline clarity so that investigation findings remain readable and defensible. Tool selection should emphasize investigation usability because investigators need clarity under pressure, and clarity is what reduces both false positives and missed incidents. A defensible choice prioritizes tools that make hypothesis testing faster and more reliable. Response support is another critical selection factor, and it requires thinking about authority, safety, and business impact, because response actions can reduce harm but can also disrupt operations. EDR often provides containment actions at the endpoint, which can be powerful when used correctly and dangerous when used without proper checks. SOAR can orchestrate response steps and coordinate approvals, which can reduce delay and improve consistency, but it can also magnify mistakes if automation is not governed. Case management supports response by ensuring that decisions, approvals, and actions are documented so the team can explain what happened and why. The selection question is whether the tooling supports controlled response, meaning actions are authorized, traceable, and aligned with the organization's risk appetite. A SOC that cannot execute response actions safely becomes dependent on slow manual coordination, while a SOC that executes actions without governance creates business risk through accidental disruption. A defensible tool choice helps the SOC act quickly when justified, while still maintaining discipline, evidence, and accountability. That balance is at the heart of management-level security operations. Sustainability is a selection requirement that beginners sometimes overlook, yet it often decides whether a SOC matures or becomes stuck in constant firefighting. Sustainable tooling is tooling that the team can maintain, tune, and operate without heroic effort, and it includes cost sustainability, staffing sustainability, and complexity sustainability. A platform that requires constant specialized tuning without enough staff time will degrade because detections drift, alerts become noisy, and trust erodes. A platform that is overly complex to integrate can become fragile, creating dependencies that fail during incidents when reliability is most important. A platform that generates large volumes of alerts without quality controls will push the team into alert fatigue, which reduces accuracy and increases burnout. When you choose tools, you should ask not only can this tool do the job, but can we keep it doing the job month after month while still improving? A defensible choice emphasizes maintainability, clarity, and operational fit over maximum features. The exam often aligns with this thinking by favoring decisions that create dependable capability rather than decisions that chase novelty. Another practical selection lens is how the tool set supports measurement and improvement, because a program that runs well learns from outcomes and adjusts based on evidence. SIEM should support tracking of detection performance, such as how often alerts lead to confirmed issues versus false positives, and it should support tuning workflows that improve quality over time. EDR should support investigation outcomes and provide evidence that helps confirm whether changes in controls are reducing endpoint risk. SOAR can support measurement by ensuring that triage steps and response actions are recorded consistently, which makes metrics more reliable. Case management is central here because it captures the life cycle of work from alert to closure, and that life cycle data supports improvement decisions like which detections need tuning and where response bottlenecks exist. If your tools cannot support meaningful measurement, you end up relying on subjective impressions, which often leads to the wrong investments. A defensible selection emphasizes the ability to generate operational evidence about performance, because management decisions should be grounded in what is actually happening. Improvement is not a side task in SOC. It is part of the operation, and tool selection should support it. It is also important to recognize that tool selection should respect organizational constraints and maturity, because choosing advanced platforms without foundational readiness can create disappointment and wasted effort. If logging is inconsistent, the first priority may be improving telemetry and data quality before expecting SIEM to deliver strong outcomes. If endpoint coverage is partial or unmanaged, EDR value will be uneven, and you may need a staged approach that focuses on high-value systems first. If processes are informal and documentation is weak, SOAR automation will struggle because it requires stable workflows to automate safely. If case management culture is not established, even the best case tool will not help unless the team uses it consistently and leadership values documentation. A mature selection approach stages capability, meaning it chooses tools and improvements that match the current foundation while building toward more advanced outcomes over time. This is not about lowering standards. It is about building a program that actually runs well instead of one that looks impressive in a diagram. A defensible plan makes these dependencies explicit and aligns tool selection with realistic operational growth. As you pull all of this together, remember that the right tool set is the one that makes your SOC faster at understanding, steadier at deciding, and safer at acting. SIEM should provide reliable, centralized evidence and support maintainable detections that fit your environment. EDR should provide deep endpoint visibility and controlled response actions that align with authority and business impact constraints. SOAR should reduce repetitive work and increase consistency by automating safe steps and orchestrating workflows, not by replacing judgment. Case management should preserve context, coordinate work, and create defensible documentation that supports escalation, learning, and continuous improvement. The most important selection skill is asking how these tools will function together as a pipeline, because operations succeed when evidence flows smoothly and decisions remain consistent. If you can explain tool choice in terms of operational outcomes, evidence continuity, sustainability, and governance, you are thinking at the level the GSOM exam expects. Tooling is not the purpose of a SOC, but when chosen well, it becomes the quiet support structure that lets people and process deliver real security outcomes day after day.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.